Her conclusion is maybe.
This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heiler.
Chapter 39, Flight from the White Tower. And our symbol is the Avendosora leaf, which represents the waygate that they're about to go through.
This is the third time where we've gone through a waygate and we've had the Avendosora leaf on the chapter header.
Yeah. Egwene and Elaine inclined their heads briefly to each group of women they passed as they made their way through the tower. It was a good thing. There were so many women from outside the tower today, Egwene thought. Too many for each to have an Aes Sedai and accepted for an escort. Alone, or in small groups, garbed richly or poorly, and dressed from half a dozen different lands, some still dusty from their journey to Tar Valon. They kept to themselves and waited their turn to ask their questions of the Aes Sedai, or present their petitions. Some women, ladies or merchants' wives, had female servants with them. Even a few men had come with petitions, standing by themselves, looking unsure about being in the White Tower, and eyeing everyone else uneasily.
Now, is there something special about this day? Is it a petitioner day? Is that different than normal?
I forget exactly how it works, but on certain days, people are allowed to come to the White Tower and ask for favors, essentially, like heal my dying son, or...
And is just a coincidence that happens on the day when they're leaving?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think, it's like once a month or something like that. People can come and ask favors.
Right. I know it's a fairly regular, they definitely have petitioners and anyone can come and ask. I just don't remember on the frequency. But a month makes sense to me.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Tying the Aes Sedai to the moon and all that kind of stuff feels very female to me.
Seems appropriate.
Yep.
And so we have Nynaeve leading the ladies through the hall, and they're kind of keeping their heads low and their hoods up so that they don't get recognized.
And so they're all dressed up in the nice dresses. I assume Nynaeve and Egwene are in their dresses from Faldara.
Right.
And Elaine, of course, just has nice dresses because she's the queen's daughter.
Yeah. Whatever they arrived in, their nicest things, so that they can kind of blend in and escape, if we can call it that.
Just leave without being noticed. They will be disciplined for not being in their whites. They're not supposed to, they're hiding the fact that they're leaving because Leandrin wants them to.
Right. Leandrin told them to tell no one that they were leaving. As they're going through, I have highlighted here, they had already dodged several who knew their faces. And then later, a little cluster of village women in stout, dark woolens dropped curtsies as they passed. So they're passing as they walk through the hall as rich women. I mean, yeah, they sort of are.
Right.
Well, Elaine is.
Considering how much gold they have in their pockets, they're doing pretty good for themselves.
Egwene's the daughter of an innkeeper. That's a pretty lucrative profession.
Oh, well, an innkeeper in a poor village.
Yeah.
With no visitors.
And of course, Min keeps her boys' clothes on so that she can pass as a servant.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what she says. One of us has to be the servant, she said, laughing. Women dressed the way you are always have at least one. Of course, we also know that you couldn't get Min in a dress if you tried.
No. But also, Nynaeve seems to find excuses to put herself in nice dresses. Yeah. Oh, I just have to wear this really nice silk for some reason. But 2 Rivers woolen is good enough. I just have to wear this really nice silk over and over and over again. She loves really nice dresses.
Lots of people like nice clothes.
Yeah.
They dodge Takima of the Brown Aja, who's one of their instructors.
And she ends up being important for Egwene when she's, how she's takes advantage of the rules when she's the Amaryllis seat and becomes they declare war against the Lyda, and so she gets power.
Yeah.
Tamika's there, and Tamika's the one who realizes
Takima.
What's going on. Mm-hmm. Takima, she's there, and she realizes what is going to happen, and she's the only one who votes against Egwene. I want to say she is secretly one of the White Tower Aja that was sent out to spy on the Saladar Aes Sedai.
Her Aja's head, so the head of the Brown Aja, sent her to the rebels because she was not invited to vote to depose Swan and raise a Lyda.
Right.
This would help keep her safe and allow the Ajas to help defuse the rebellion. She has allied herself with the Saladar Aes Sedai and is a sitter in the Saladar Hall.
So she was initially sent as basically a spy from the White Tower and went native and converted and became a sitter for the rebels.
Oh, I guess so. It doesn't say anything about spying.
Well, that's where it says the head of her Aja sent her because she wasn't in and on the vote, so it's believable that she was not part of the towers.
Well, it looks like a lot of the Ajas at that time split willingly, knowing that they kind of had to. It looks like the head of the Brown Aja was like, you guys go here, we'll stay here, and see what we can do about fixing this.
Well, and that's the secret of the two young sitters that Suan points out a couple of times, as she notices, why are all these sitters too young? Well, they were appointed because the Ajas thought that the break would be temporary, and so they were supposed to then resign and give the seats back to the older sisters when the tower came back together.
Because when there was only one hall again.
Exactly. But that kind of backfired on them. They sneak by Iriella and Eltz. And Iriella, we just saw, she was the one who Nynaeve knocked upside the head, and that's why she got sent to the Mistress of the Novices.
The accepted Arella.
Yeah.
And Elsie Grinwell, who's always in trouble.
Right. And so she's being chewed out right now.
Dragged down the hallway by her ear. My heart may burst before we reach the stables, Elaine murmured. Is this what an adventure is like all the time, Egwene? Your heart in your mouth and your stomach in your feet? I suppose it is, Egwene said slowly.
That's a great callback to when they're fleeing Emmons Field, and she's like, woo, adventure! And Rand's like, I don't know. But I do like that the exciting part was what you remembered when you looked back, and the stories left out a good deal of unpleasantness.
That's always true.
Yeah. I think about that, like when I go on either long hikes or like if I'm camping, I think back and it's such a great time, but there are definitely some unpleasantness, like sleeping on the ground and
that's part of the fun.
Eating. Oh, right. But you don't think back. Like when you're in the middle of it, you're like, oh, this is miserable. And then you think back and you're like, that was kind of fun.
My mantra on the Appalachian Trail when it was just it rained, 2012 was just like a really wet year, was that this will be funny in 2 months.
Right. Exactly.
And I would just say that to myself when I was miserable. Next year, this is going to make a great story.
On the bike trip when I was going up mountains suffering from heat stroke and unable to get cool, and I was just like, this will be fun in hindsight. But right now I'm miserable.
Mm-hmm. And finally they make it to the dusty yard of the South Stable, where novices' horses were kept, for those who had them, until they had need of mounts again, which was generally not until they became accepted or were sent home.
I noticed here they use the tower grounds spread over a good many hides of land.
I think I read that somewhere once. It's not a term we see a lot, but it means like an acre.
Is it about an acre?
Well, I don't know.
That was my assumption, is that a hide of land is about an acre of land.
A hide, a unit of area for measuring land equal to 100 paces by 100 paces. 300 feet by 300 feet, approximately. These horses just sit there for years. Somebody must be riding them. They can't just stay in the stables.
They've got a stable that maintains them and exercises them. They're not just like in the stable being ignored. There's definitely servants handling them. I'm
sure it is very expensive, but the White Tower is rich.
But yeah, they get reunited with Bella here, so we know something important is going to happen because Bella's involved. So Bella and Nynaeve's horse are ready, but the other two weren't supposed to come, so their horses aren't.
Nynaeve strode into the stable as if she owned it. It had a clean smell of hay and horse, and 2 long rows of stalls ran back into the shadows, barred with light from the vents above. For a wonder, Shaggy Bella and Nynaeve's gray mare stood near the doors. Bella put her nose over the stall door and whickered softly to Egwene. What do you think Bella's saying?
Nice to see you.
Oh, you need help again?
Honestly, she's probably saying, Leandrin's a dark friend.
There must be some mistake, my lady. Those animals are ours, Nynaeve said firmly, folding her arms so that the serpent ring was obvious. You will saddle them now. Egwene held her breath. It was a last-ditch plan that Nynaeve would try to pass as an Aes Sedai if they had difficulties with anyone who might actually accept her as one. She says none of the women of the tower would, but maybe a stableman or a guard wouldn't know the difference.
I think the stableman's a dark friend.
Why?
Because of the way he reacts to Leandrin, the use of Leandrin's name.
I mean, She's an Aes Sedai, though, anyway.
That's true. She could just have commanded him.
Yeah, she doesn't need to have any particular power over him to say.
No. But my headcanon has always been that this guy is a dark friend, which makes what Nynaeve says to him particularly threatening in a way that I don't think she really means to be.
Maybe. You trot those horses out and saddle them, or you'll have need of Liandrin's healing if she will give it to you. The groom mouthed Liandrin's name, but one look at Nynaeve's face and he saw to the horses with no more than a mutter or two, not loud enough for anyone but himself to hear. Nynaeve reminds him to keep his mouth shut.
Yeah, this quote in particular, I think he sees as a pretty drastic threat.
No doubt you were told to keep this quiet, and that hasn't changed, whether we are 2 or 200. If you think it has, think about what Liandrin will do if you talk what you were told to keep quiet. It's a weird sentence. Yeah. And Elaine tosses him a coin as they leave.
Which is definitely a system that they pretty much establish from here on out. Nynaeve gives whoever it is a hard time, then Elaine apologizes with some money.
Good cop, bad cop. Good Aes Sedai, bad Aes Sedai.
Stick and honey.
I hope we don't need either with the guards, Egwene said. I hope Liandrin spoke to them too. But when they get to the gate, the guards just wave them through.
Yeah, they don't really care.
And Egwene notes that the guards are there to keep people out, not keep people in. They don't really care who leaves.
Which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And they're not there to keep the accepted in or anything like that.
No.
Although I guess if a girl tried to leave in an accepted dress, they would probably do something.
That's a little more obvious.
Yeah. Or at least report it.
So they ride to the edge of the city where there's an Ogier Grove.
And this is the only, I think, Ogier Grove that we see that's not been cut down.
I think that's right. Or
outside of a steading. That one steading we saw. I think we in steading Sofu, wasn't there a grove? There were great trees.
But a steading is different from a grove.
I guess you're right, because they make the groves in the cities that they build to remind them of the steading. So they don't actually put the groves in the steadings. They're just in cities.
A grove is like an artificial steading.
Right.
More or less.
Without any of the power limiting.
Yeah, I think this is the only one that is still clearly maintained, because there's other groves that are not cut down, but there's just nothing there. It's just empty. Well, and by empty, I mean wild forest.
It's nothing special. It's not a grove. It's just a forest.
Yeah. The great trees were now visible beyond the rooftops. Their spreading tops 100 spans and more in the air. Towering oaks and elms, leather leaves and firs were dwarfed beneath them.
If there's one thing that makes Tar Valon a great city, it's not just the architecture, but it's the fact that they also have a grove.
Yeah. I noted that last quote because we were talking a little recently about whether great trees were a specific kind of tree or just very old trees, and this little bit here implies that the great trees are great trees, and they're not oaks, elms, leather leaves, or firs. There's something else.
I would almost say they would be a tree that was native to the Ogier land before it became part of Randland.
Maybe. I like the idea that they're like redwoods or something. They're trees that can get that big.
Sure.
You know? I don't think it's ever explicitly stated, but I was wondering if they were just very old trees or a special kind.
I think both.
Yeah.
I mean, very old and special trees.
Yeah.
But yeah, the great tree, I think, is a type of tree that we don't necessarily see in our world.
In the space of 10 strides, they seem to be miles from the nearest town. They note how the forest dampens the sound, and
I really love that when I walk into a forest and it feels like, even if I'm in the middle of a city, the Japanese garden here in Oregon in Portland does a really good job of that. That you walk into it and it's not that big, but it feels like you just get totally lost in it.
I had a friend who got really into researching architecture and city planning, and they were telling me all about Portland, and apparently Laurelhurst Park is designed in such a way that if you're in it, you can't see out of it, and if you're outside of it, you can't see into it.
Huh.
When you walk into the middle of it, and it's not perfect, but when you walk into the middle of it, you can't tell that you're inside of a city. It just looks, you can only see the park. It's like shaped like a big bowl, and there's a ring of trees around it.
They do a pretty good job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a cool idea. I imagine Ogier groves are like that. They're meant to hide where you are, kind of.
So do you think there's a reason why this waygate isn't guarded? Or why nobody thinks to guard the waygates?
I think only the Ogier think to guard the waygates. Right? The one in Caemlin's unguarded. The one in Cairhien is only guarded because Barthanas built a manor next to it.
Do you think that the Amelin seat. I mean, Suan knows that the Trollocs are using the Waygates, right? You think Moraine communicated that to her?
I don't know that that's known yet, that Trollocs are using Waygates.
I think Moraine knew from Padden Fane that that's how he brought the Trollocs. Or did he just say he brought the Trollocs to Emond's Field and he didn't say how?
Do we see those conversations?
Oh yeah, they see the Trollocs trapped in the stone. We have some new neighbors. They moved in last week, and they have 2 dogs. And whenever new dogs move in, there's always a lot more activity going on between the barking and the whining.
So Swan may know, because Moraine knows, that Dark Friends are using the ways to transport Trollocs. I would think, though, that if they were so sure about that, they could easily place a guard.
You'd think.
Or
lock them.
A ward.
Yeah.
Doesn't Moraine say it's pretty easy to place a ward that will kill Trollocs?
I mean, Iran does that. He places that resetting trap for Trollocs that pass through a Waygate.
At least warn her.
There may be a warding around it that sets off alarms if shadow spawn across it.
Which would let them know.
Yeah. We know that Moraine is capable of doing that.
And also, even if Swan does know, if she places a guard at this Waygate, people will ask her why, and she'll have to explain where she got that information, which would produce a line of questioning that is not favorable.
Sure. In my opinion, they just don't consider it. It's just the idea, the ways for them are shut down. They don't think that it still comes as a surprise, even later to them, that Trollocs are using them to move through.
Yeah.
You know, like even in the last battle, they nearly lose Camelin because of it, right? Like it takes them a while to get it through their heads that the ways are a dangerous thing to have going into each of your cities. They think the Black Wind basically makes it impassable, and it doesn't.
Right.
Because the Shadow is willing to sacrifice a certain percentage of its troops to the Black Wind just to send them through the ways.
I would think that it's just not considered at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, it's not considered until later when Rand sends Loyal on his quest to lock all the gates.
Right. And that's after Perrin locks the gate in Emond's Field, and then it gets unlocked. And he has to, like, totally shut it down by stealing all the leaves. So Liandrin shows up.
Dramatically?
Rather dramatically. And is a jerk. She's got some pole lights on her horse, which Egwene notices.
It's
and
like,
those are...
What do we need those for?
Yeah, going through the ways.
Yeah. Liandrin scolds Nynaeve and Egwene for telling anyone, because there are 4 rather than 2.
Mm-hmm.
And we see later that kind of sort of ruins her plan, more or less.
Yeah, it does.
In the long run, it definitely ruins her plan.
I really like this quote. She says, "So, I had made arrangements for you to be taken care of, but as you are here, 4 can make this journey as well as 2. And then later, and Elaine says, taken care of? I don't understand. And her answer is, do you believe the Black Ajah will be gentle with you just because you are heir to a throne? Had you remained in the White Tower, you might not have lived the night."
That silenced them all for a moment.
So I honestly think that when she says, I had plans to take care of you, she's saying I was going to have the 2 of you assassinated tonight. The Black Ajah, and by the Black Ajah, I mean me, was going to kill Elaine and Min.
Because they probably know.
Because they know. And they're friends of these. They would know that these 2 would be gone. So I think Liandrin's like, oh, you 2 are here? Well, I guess I'll just, instead of having you assassinated in the tower, I'm going to...
You can be Suroth's problem.
Exactly. I think the fact that Elaine and Min chose to go with them saved their lives. If they hadn't come, they would have been assassinated.
Oh, and well, yeah, and certainly in the long run, it saves all of them because with Min and Elaine creating a distraction, they're not able to call her Nynaeve, which is what ruins the plan in the long run. I don't think Elaine and Min could have.
Nynaeve causes a pretty decent distraction herself.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get there.
Yeah.
Min stabs a guy. That's helpful.
Cuts his hand.
Yeah. Egwene's throat tightened. Suddenly, she knew why Liandrin had brought lanterns, and she did not like what she knew. She heard Nynaeve whisper, "A Waygate." They both remembered the ways all too well. "We did it once," she told herself as much as Nynaeve. "We can do it again."
And she just says that to Nynaeve. She does not share that with
Leandrin.
Or Elaine.
Yeah. A waygate, Elaine breathes. I did not think the ways could be used any longer. At least, I did not think their use was allowed.
That's what your book learning gets you. Leandrin takes the leaf off, and it opens up, and we don't see Machine Shin. Now, in terms of timing, this is happening...
Currently, Rand is either nowhere or in Tomenhead.
He's nowhere.
Because he's nowhere right now.
Yeah, because Elaine is on Tomenhead for a while before he gets there.
Okay, guys, and by nowhere, Rand is nowhere, we mean he's flickering for like 3 to 4 months in Randland time. So for him, it's a few moments, a few chapters ago. But for the girls, it's a whole season.
He's basically not in this world. He's in other worlds.
So at the end of that chapter with the Flicker chapter with Rand, he arrives in Tomenhead. That doesn't happen until after this chapter. Well after this chapter is over. Which means Ma Shin is... We don't know.
Just in the ways.
Wandering around the ways looking for Rand.
You can wait here for me, safely enclosed by the fence until I come for you. Or perhaps the Black Ajah will find you before anyone else. It's like, it already has. Leandrin is Black Ajah.
She dug her heels into Bella's flanks, and the shaggy mare, restive from too much time in the stable, leapt forward. Nynaeve warns her, but it's too late. And Egwene stumbles in, and Bella almost eats it and rolls over herself.
Well, because time is moving faster in the ways.
Right.
So if you move fast outside, it's like you're going to hit it, and it's going to pull you through, because like the front of your body, the front of the horse is moving faster than the back of the horse.
Yeah. I don't know how that works. It is disorienting. Is the best way to put it.
Mm-hmm. And then you have the opposite problem when you're leaving, because then the front of your horse is moving slower than the back of it.
Yeah.
And so you end up like pushing your front out, whereas in this one, like pulls your back in, and then you end up stumbling.
There was only the blackness around her in every direction, except for the rectangle of the open waygate, like a window of smoked glass when seen from this side. It let no light in. The black seemed to press right up against it, but through it, Egwene could see the others, moving by the slowest increments, like figures in a nightmare.
And so when you go through the ways, if you do like a 2-day journey in the ways, that's only a couple of probably hours outside of the ways.
I don't really know, because we don't know how far you travel in the ways. But they make it to Tomenhead in what, 2 days?
2 days in the ways. So I'm wondering if maybe that's more like 12 hours outside of the ways. Well, because time's moving faster inside the ways than outside, right?
I guess.
Just because they can be inside the ways and watch everything outside the ways move slowly.
Okay, yeah.
So that means outside the way, if inside the ways 2 days have passed, much less time has passed outside the ways.
Yeah.
So they take a 2-day journey, but in the real world, maybe only 12 hours pass. So they're able to go from one side to Tarvalon to Tomenhead in about 12 hours in normal time.
That sounds about right. But also, the distance is different.
Oh, totally. Distance and time definitely change. Nynaeve checks to make sure that she's all right. And here's a great Nynaeve quote. "As long as you know you deserve to," she murmured, "then you didn't deserve to."
You break your neck and I'll see it mended just so I can break it again. I liked that one too.
They use that kind of frequently. I feel like Nynaeve says that a lot. Like, if you get yourself killed, I'll heal you up so I can kill you again.
Yeah.
I think she uses that a couple of times, like when the girls get themselves in danger. Wisdom drop in wisdom.
# wisdom drop. Leandrin replaces the leaf and rides through as it closes behind her. And the next couple of pages are kind of like a little bit of a description of the ways. I also noticed that Leandrin has cheat sheet, essentially. She walks up to the guide stones and cross-references it.
I'm assuming it's just basically directions on how to get, look for this guiding, look for that guiding.
Yeah, to a piece of paper that she's holding in her cloak.
I'm willing to bet that it was written by, what do you think, one of the Forsaken?
Maybe. Anyone who knows how to navigate the ways.
A couple of Ogier. We know Ishmael has been sending Shadowspawn through with
the Ogier wouldn't help her.
So I'm guessing the only way, because I don't think it's general knowledge in the White Tower
Probably some brown Aja or something would be able to interpret the Ogier script at least, if not write it.
Maybe.
Right, because isn't it some old Ogier dialect or something like that?
I didn't think it was like specifically.
So even not just any Ogier is able to do it. Does anyone know the answer to that?
No, because Loyal has to study them in order to navigate.
I may have just made that up in my head that it's in like an old dialect that he had to study, but it's some other thing, like, or a series of symbols that.
Right. And so the Dark definitely has maps. Wherever they got them from, we know Trollocs are using them. And that was passed on to Leandrin. I was just trying to figure out, like, this particular note, do we think it...
Where did she get the information? No, I don't know.
I'm just assuming it came down through Alviarin, and it was passed to Alviarin by one of the Forsaken.
Yeah.
More description of the islands being directly overhead as they spiral up.
I love that.
Yeah.
Just imagine like an island and an arc that they follow that go so kind of like what a C clamp looks like, if you guys know what I mean, where there's two flat parts and a long C piece of steel that connects the two. C-shaped piece of steel.
Do you think they're walking on the inside of that C or the outside?
So like the outside.
Okay.
So gravity just shifts as they walk around it, and then they're upside down underneath.
Whereas I have a different version. I picture a platform and then a spiral that goes around and around and around
until they're eventually
underneath the same island they were just on.
I like I guess I just like the image that gravity makes no sense, and you can just the path just twists and turns, and you just stay on the one side of it.
Whereas I've always thought of it as gravity is consistently down, but these islands are over each other in ways that, like, physically they should be falling.
I mean, that makes sense too. But we have agreed in the past that it's basically an M.C. Escher painting. You just can't see it because it's dark.
Mm-hmm. We all have our own little mental images here. And I think ours are slightly different on the ways.
Yeah, only slightly.
But there's definitely some weirdness going on in terms of perspective and reality. And
everybody seems really freaked out when they realize Egwene wished she was not sure that the first island was directly over their heads.
Just asking Leandrin questions. How long is it going to take? The more you bother me, the longer it's going to take. Kids.
Throw you over the side.
Don't make me turn this waygate back around.
Yeah, about a chapter and a half, Egwene. And the next thing I have is Egwene was surprised to realize she still felt the attraction of Saidar, both the presence of the female half of the true source and the desire to touch it, to channel its flow. Somehow, she had thought the shadow's taint on the ways would hide it from her. She could sense that taint after a fashion. It was faint and had nothing to do with Saidar, but she was sure that reaching for the true source here would be like baring her arm to foul, greasy smoke in order to reach a clean cup. It made me wonder if someone tries to channel Saidar in the ways, if they get a touch of the taint in the way that a male channeler does outside of the ways.
That's what I was thinking, that a female channeling inside the ways would eventually go insane.
That makes sense to me, but I don't know that we get to see a description of someone doing it. Like, we see Moraine do it, but through the eyes of Rand, I think.
Right. And so we definitely see her, it changes the effect of her channeling. We don't know if she got a dose of the taint on her soul at all.
Her conclusion is maybe. It definitely does something weird, and Egwene says she can sense it there in between her and Saidar, more or less. And it's basically what Rand describes the taint being like, an oil slick on top of water.
And Leandrin, I think, supports that. She says, "You will not so much as think of the source unless I tell you to. Why, if one such as you tried to channel in here, in the ways, you might as well go as mad as a man."
Yeah, and I believe her, although she lies. We know that she can.
Now, she says right after that, "You have not the training to deal with the taint of those men who made this."
As if she does.
Well, I think maybe her allegiance to the dark and to the shadow may be what actually prevents her from experiencing that taint.
Because we know that male Forsaken can channel Saidin, and the Dark One gives them like a sieve, or however that works. That cleans away the taint so that it doesn't destroy them. Women may have the same thing. She would have to channel a lot more of it to go mad. Because Rand's getting huge doses of it all the time, and it takes years.
Yeah, I mean, I think a single channeling incident is not going to...
No, me neither.
have a significant effect on Moraine.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there are any other examples of people channeling in the ways, like in the rest of the series, and I honestly can't think of any.
No, it's usually they flee the ways and then turn around and channel.
As far as our team Light here, this is one of the last times anyone travels the ways.
Perrin, but he doesn't take any channelers with him.
Perrin's with like Loyal and Semiel, I think. Aiel.
And then right after that, Liandrin says Moraine does not know so much as she thinks. And I wonder if that's just an oblique reference to she doesn't know I'm a dark friend, or...
I figured.
I also thought that it's possible that being Black Aja, they may not only have a map, but they may have some way to deal with the Black Wind. And that might be why she's using the ways with impunity. It's just a thought that perhaps on the dark side they have some way to prevent the Dark Wind, or some way to deal with it.
Yeah, maybe. In the same way that perhaps Liandrin could channel because she's a dark friend with some protection from the taint of the ways, because the taint in the ways is the taint on Sidene.
Right.
Or at least related to. And we know that dark friends and Chosen can be protected from that.
So, I mean, I don't think they're actively working together, but I think she has some way of dealing with it. Because she says here, if the Black Wind appears, I will deal with it. She's a little too confident. It's not like if the Black Wind appears, we run. I think it's as part of the Black Aja, and possibly through transporting the Trollocs through the ways, they figured out somehow to either protect themselves from it or
divert it
or drive it off. So I'm reading in a lot to Liandrin's few statements.
Yeah, we don't really get a lot, and anything she's saying could be misleading or an outright lie, so that's hard to say.
But I do like to interpret her as her double talking to these girls.
And I think I was buying what you were saying. I think it was the last time we were sitting down, that a lot of what Liandrin says is not a lie. It's actually pretty hard to catch her in a lie, even knowing what we know.
I think it's just deep habit ingrained into Aes Sedai, which is to tell half-truths and avoid lying whenever possible.
Rand, Perrin, and Matt are under threat from the Black Aja. Well, they are. None of that is, a lie.
Yeah.
She just misleads them and says this fact, and then, wouldn't you like to go help him? Yes. Then come with me. None of that is a lie.
Yeah,
no,
the only thing,
it just misleads them into believing what is going to happen next.
Min complains a lot about dealing with this because of a man, which she does a lot because she blames Rand for getting her involved in this kind of stuff.
I don't think any man is worth this.
She wouldn't be involved if it weren't for Rand. She'd be back in Barrelon. We get a little bit of a discussion here of Rand with Min.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the way he sort of throws that out there. What if he marries some woman you've never seen before? Like Avienda or Elaine or me? She's just like, what then? She basically says this is what's going to happen, but throws it out there as a hypothetical and is saying, like, what would you do if this happened? Knowing that that's exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's interesting to go back through this and see what Min says about things like this, because we know that she knows what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. She's just like gauging Egwene's response.
She's totally throwing that out there just to see, like, what do you think?
I do not think her voice caught, and she coughed to cover it. This is Egwene. I do not think he will ever marry, but if he does, I wish well to whoever ends up with him, even one of you.
Or both of you.
She thought she sounded as if she meant it. He is stubborn as a mule and wrong-headed to a fault, but he is gentle. Her voice shook, but she managed to turn the quiver into a laugh. And I just interpret that at all as, well, he's destined to go insane and kill everyone around him, so.
The killing everyone around him is definitely not a Destiny thing. That's just, everyone assumes since he did it in the last life, he's going to do it again.
It is likely that male channelers will go insane and hurt people. Although, we do see a lot of channelers go insane and not hurt anyone. They're just weird.
They also kill him pretty quick.
Yeah, for the most part. Mm-hmm. I also highlighted, it would not be the first time the Prince of Andor had no title before he wed.
Oh yeah, Elaine does not care that he's a shepherd.
This won't be the second time, though. He's going to have a bunch of titles before he never weds,
Well,
technically.
Yeah, because I'm thinking of when he calls Min his wife, but that is when they go visit the rebel camp in Kyrian and Vane attacks him.
Yeah?
That's when he's with Min and he's like calling her his wife. The girls are talking about Rand, and I noticed Nynaeve is watching Min really carefully. I think she realizes that Min is seeing something about the women and Rand and marriage.
Sleep came slowly to Egwene, fitfully, and was filled with bad dreams. She did not dream of Rand, but of men whose eyes were fire. His face was not masked this time, and it was horrible with almost healed burns.
So I think that is Ishmael in her dreams watching her.
Watching her, watching him.
Leandrin is taking the girls to the Waygate under his orders to get them away from Rand.
Yeah.
And so he's checking in on them, and he's investigating their dreams to make sure that everything is going the way he wants. And so he's laughing because he set this all up. And since Rand's not in this world, it's not like he can pester Ishmael can pester Rand or anything.
Just got nothing better to do.
Yep.
I was not surprised, but I guess interested to sort of notice that Ishmael realizes that Egwene and Nynaeve are important and that they're part of it, as Moraine says.
Whatever it is.
Yeah, whatever it is. And that if Nynaeve and Egwene stay near Rand and are allowed to work in concert with him, then things will go badly for him.
I often wonder if that's Varen giving that feedback.
About the girls?
Yeah, because she is still a dark friend, and she knows more about them than anyone else. So I wonder if she is feeding the dark a little bit of knowledge. So I'm trying to figure out how else would they know about the girls.
I was definitely interested in that because they do escape and they do work in concert with Rand, and it does go badly for Ishmael. Yeah, I don't know what Varen's motivations are right now. We've talked about it before, but it's really hard to say because she could be working for the Dark right now. We know that she's not later.
Well, she's only actually able to betray the Dark in the hour of her death. The rest of the time,
Does she just spend it gathering information?
Basically, I think. But for the most part, she has to obey orders.
And she was unwillingly brought into the Black Aja, so it makes sense that she would be working for the Light this whole time, or avoiding really helping the Dark and doing nothing but gathering information. But we don't know. She can be compelled to do anything.
I mean, she has to obey, as we know from the Three Oaths, she has to obey the orders of people above her. So if she's deliberately ordered to share intelligence or hurt somebody, it's very possible that Varen does act as a dark friend throughout the beginning of the series.
That was another thing we can't confirm or deny.
Next thing I have is that Leandrin doesn't seem to be affected by the tiredness of the dark. Thought that was odd.
The tiredness?
Just because it takes them 2 days and the girls are like sleeping on the ground and they seem to be just exhausted and the darkness really seems to be wearing down on them and Leandrin isn't. They slumped in their saddles like sacks of grain except for Leandrin. The Aes Sedai seemed unaffected by tiredness or the dark. She was as fresh as if she had been back in the White Tower and as cold. Just wondering if that was maybe being in the ways don't affect her as much because of her link to the Dark One.
I would think it's just because she's Aes Sedai, or just because she's a channeler. I mean, the other girls are channelers.
I don't have an answer. I was just wondering if why he made a point of pointing out that Leandrin wasn't tired when the girls were.
Yeah, that's interesting. She only lets them sleep for a few hours at a time. Yeah, it could be one of the mind tricks. Like she is tired but doesn't have to act tired.
Yeah,
shrugging.
It could be that. And so after 2 days traveling the ways and ramps and bridges and islands and guidings, they make it to the end. No sign of the Black Wind.
And then, while Egwene blinked wearily, Leandrin was riding away from a guiding, not toward another bridge or ramp, but down a pitted white line that led off into the darkness. Egwene stared at her friends, and they all hurried to follow. Ahead, by the light of the lantern, the Aes Sedai was already removing the Avendasora leaf from the carvings on a waygate. "We are here," Leandrin said, smiling. I have brought you at last to where you must go.
Must. Dark prophecy?
Compulsion?
Compulsion?
I have brought you at last to where you must go. Creepy? Check.
Very creepy. Very creepy. So I want to start off by thanking our patrons. We actually set a new goal for sending us to JordanCon, and you guys have come through for us and really started to donate. I've got a whole long list of names, and it's been, I guess, about 2 weeks, because I think I did the names at the end of February, and so in the last 2 weeks, let's see what we've had. $5 from Nathan Reyna. $5 from Tamara WJ.
Thanks, Tamara. Or Tamara?
Tomorrow?
Guessing.
Sure.
This next one's a doozy.
Yeah.
But we thank you especially profusely because we're going to get your name wrong. Mladen Dribin. Oh, fuck.
Dribin Jakovic?
Dribin Jakovic? That sounds good to me.
Mladen Dribin Jakovic.
We appreciate you, and we're sorry that we're bad at this double consonant thing.
Eric Cox donated.
Thank you, Eric.
And that's the end of February. And then in March, we got King Noobs at the Aes Sedai level. Brian Slover.
Thank you,
at
guys.
the Ashaman. Christine Rice jumped up. That's Christine, who you hear us thank all the time. She gave us a little more money, so thank you, Christine. She's here at all of the live recordings. Eric Cox went up again a little bit. Chip Shannon.
Thank you, Chip.
Jennifer Anton. Ryan Hogue donated a little bit more. Lindsay Donovan. Brianne Weldon.
Thank you, Brianna.
Doug Fortune. And Doug's been sending us emails.
Thank you, Doug.
So he gives us quite a bit of feedback. He's actually
fastidious emails as you work your way through the series.
A lot of old ones. He's also sending us some feedback on the new one. So I read that email actually before we did this one. So Thanks for the feedback. You had some good ideas in there. David Tansley.
Thank you, David.
Daniel S. Miss Andre Furiosa. And Kenneth Cerny.
We're doing our best. We don't have the audiobooks to help us with these pronunciations.
And Kenneth, thank you so much for that very generous pledge. It's really appreciated.
Yeah, that was a big one. But thank you to everyone. We really appreciate you guys turning this into something like a small business.
Oh, yeah. And we also got some Bitcoins from DT.
We appreciate that, man, or
David
lady.
Tansley.
Okay, I had no idea. But that's super cool, and Seth opened up a Bitcoin wallet for Watt Spoilers, so I figure I'll put a link to the Bitcoin wallet if people want to donate that way. We don't very well care. You can send us whatever you want.
And there is, for those of you who understand Bitcoin, the receiving address is up on the website. So if you want to send us money, you can go to the website.
Yeah, Seth and I have started reading through Mistborn, the Mistborn trilogy, which we've already read before, but we're going to read it again, and then we're going to start a podcast that will be much like Watt Spoilers, but Mistborn spoilers, where we go through that as well. We've been like... Wow, people are excited about that in the Discord channel. We've been like kicking it around for a while and talking about... Yeah, I see like someone throwing out Cosmere spoilers, and we can definitely work our way into something like that, but we figured a good place to start would be the Mistborn trilogy with the secret history included. And we can work our way through that, and so there will be 2 podcasts.
And we're thinking of just doing that like once a week to start off with, just sort of having a bit of a slow start on that. But, you know, that can be another 2 years worth of podcast right there.
Oh, yeah. So what we suppose we'll be doing is like every Thursday and Sunday night now we do Wheel of Time spoilers. We do 2 chapters each of those nights. And we typically release around 3 a week.
Generally because sometimes we end up either combining 2 chapters or we do a special episode for the patrons or something else happens where we don't
fall a little behind on
fall
recording and we have something to release. And then at least one night we'll be doing Mistborn. So it'll be like a different Discord server, different Patreon and everything, but it'll be us. We're also talking about taking some of that Patreon money and turning this, because our income is getting close to taxable.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting to that range. And if we start a new podcast, and even if it's as successful as Watt Spoilers, that we get into the taxable zone where this is actually a business now. And for legal reasons, there's certain things that we have to do.
So we're thinking about starting up an LLC, limited liability company, just as an umbrella company to hold the various podcasts. And that will allow us to not only do the 2, but maybe sort of have an umbrella where we have more than 2.
If we have a couple of friends that want to do like Lord of the Rings, which is not me and Seth's bag, but
No.
It's a lot of people's bag, and people would listen to that podcast. So if somebody wanted to do it, you could come under our umbrella and we can help you as much as we can. Or, that's basically the idea, that we make this book club podcast world.
Because we've got the space to record, so we can sit people down here and have them record, or if they just do it remotely.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?